So, hi there, I'm Elise. I'm so happy to be here today. And I work for a great advocacy organization called Women Thrive. Women Thrive's mission is to work with both men and women, like Kirsten was telling us about, to advocate for policy changes that enable women and poor communities to not just survive, but really thrive. I want to talk today about women living in developing countries. And we haven't talked so much about that yet, and power. So as some of us may know, we have about 1.5 billion people today who are living in extreme poverty. And the World Bank defines that as $1.25 per day. And 2/3 of them are women. And women are usually the last to eat in the household, the last to get medical care, the last to go to school. And there's over 500 million women in the world who are illiterate, but they're the first. They're the first to get be at risk of human trafficking. The first to be at risk of gender-based violence, and the first to feel all of the blows of the global economic crises that we've been experiencing. But I actually don't want to talk about all of the problems that women in global South countries are facing. I want to talk about how can we recognize and support women's power in developing countries. So let's look at this picture. And it's an important picture from the last couple of years. This is a young woman from Niger in West Africa who was suffering from the global hunger crisis. And when you look at this picture, it evokes a lot of emotions. You feel maybe some compassion, your fear that could happen to your daughter, maybe some anger. But it represents a problem that we face way too often in the international development world. It operates from a deficit framework. Because when you look at this image, you think about all the things that this woman does not have. She doesn't have enough to eat. She probably doesn't have much money in her family. She's probably not in school. And the problem when you start from a deficit framework is that you've already made up your mind about this woman. She's lying there on the ground. It almost seems like she's a passive victim and doesn't have much power over her life. Maybe she's dependent on food from us or resources from us or our guidance. And luckily, we don't actually see a lot of these pictures anymore, not as many as we used to, though they're still there. And I think our understanding of gender and development has evolved a lot over the years. But they're still there. So here's a picture that suggests a slightly better framework. This is from March in 2012. And it recognizes the idea of women having power. It shows a woman who's actively engaged in her own development, that of her community. But it still has some problems with it. If you think about it, this woman is stooped over. You can't see her face. And it's almost like we're taking this voyeuristic peek into her life. We're not really engaging with her one-on-one. And the title actually presents some problems as well. It's still based on the idea that we can give power to her and that she might be able to help serve the world by supplying food as opposed to being an equal partner in the world to solve this hunger problem. So I'm not trying to suggest that it's always wrong to use the words empower women, because I appreciate that we want to be involved and help with that process of women gaining power. And I'm not suggesting that it's wrong to talk about how investing in women is good for the U.S. or good for the planet, because it really is, and I think that can help us maybe free up some international foreign assistance dollars that are really needed for women. But what I am trying to say is that we need to shift the power paradigm. I think that we like the idea of empowering women, but we're not yet quite comfortable with the image of women having power. So I'm going to say that one more time just so it kind of sinks in. So we like the idea of empowering women, giving power to women, but I think as a country and as a world, we're not yet fully comfortable with the image of women having power. Otherwise, we'd have more leaders in power. So I I think that this is an important time in our history. You know, we've never been so interconnected and had so much access to technology, and yet we've never had such a huge gap in between the people who have wealth in the world and those who are in poverty. And this is really important because it's an important crossroads moment for us as an international development community. Women's power is a tricky thing. You know, we don't always wear it on our sleeve where everyone can see, right? Sometimes it's in this space in between. And I learned this lesson a bit the last couple of years while I've been working on Haiti land and housing rights. So before I came to Women Thrive, as Dana mentioned, I was working in an organization called Action Aid. And Action Aid, we worked on with women and men and communities that are living in poverty in speaking up for their land rights, and women farmers really speaking up to get the land that they needed. And as some of you may know, even before the earthquake that happened in 2010, you know, women were really struggling to kind of claim their power in Haiti. Only 13% of women were in the Senate and 4% in the lower chamber, so you know, some similarities with our own country. Even though actually now it's a little bit better. Haiti just passed a law so that 30% of women have to be in Congress. Congress has to be made up of at least 30% women. But also women earn only about half as much as men do on average in Haiti. But we can't be fooled into thinking that Haitian women don't have power, because they do. In fact, it's really widely recognized that Haitian women make up the bedrock of Haiti's foundation. And there's even this Creole phrase that women are the poteau-mitons, which means the pillars of society. So it's confusing sometimes when you hear this all the time, and yet so many of the women I know in really poor communities in Haiti, they might not always feel like they have the power that they want, but yet somehow they're still the pillars of society. I learned this lesson on a trip a couple of years ago, just after the cholera outbreak took place in Haiti. And that just wreaked havoc throughout the country. I don't know if folks have read about that some, but you know, so many people died so quickly. So I was in Port-au-Prince, the capital of Haiti, when Action Aid got a call from one of our community partners. And they asked for Action Aid to come and bring some resources and training materials and to work with community liaison in a very rural area, called the Central Plateau, to do this training on prevention, how to prevent cholera. So I and a bunch of the Action Aid staff, we jumped in the trucks and we made our way over some really adventurous roads, and we met up with the community partner at her house. And let's say her name is Marie, just to protect her privacy. So we show up at Marie's house, this really rural area, very poor, terrible roads, very little infrastructure. And you know, Marie, she's not a mayor, she doesn't have a formal title, she just runs a very modest nonprofit organization. And we show up, and right away, I like Marie. She is just a force of nature. And she says, you know, come in, sit down under the coconut tree, and I'm going to go mobilize my community agents. You just wait here, I'll be back. Okay. And so she goes and gets the youth, men, boys, and artists, and she sends them around to villages all over. And within an hour, we had hundreds of people mobilized and ready for this prevention training. And I was so impressed with Marie throughout the training. She knew when to step to the side and let the mayor, who was a man, and some of the male leaders in the area kind of take the stage and really take ownership over the training, even though she had really planned it. That's okay. And she knew when to step forward and help explain things. She knew when and how to connect the women from the different villages so they had the tools they needed to go back to their villages. You know, she didn't have this official title of power in the community, but she really knew how to use her power in this subtle way at times. So I was just really impressed with women like Marie throughout my career. And I think this crossroads moment that we're at, you know, we definitely need better policies for women, right? We need fair trade policies and better access to medical care and, you know, better schooling for women. But we also have an important opportunity to go and ask women, not just what do they want and what do they need, but what do they already have? What tools and resources and power do they already possess? And I think that's the idea of starting from an assets framework in the international development world. Going in and recognizing that women like Marie, even though they may be poor or living in poverty, they still have a lot to offer. And we talk about this a lot and wanting women to have power and show power, but we don't always go in and really ask and look for that power. So I think one of the things that I've had a lot of privilege to learn from working with some amazing women over the course of my career, I would bullet it down to 3 key points, 3 key ideas that women have taught me a lot in countries like Haiti and in West Africa. I think some of the successes to having really collaborative development that works and goes the long haul. I think the 3 ideas would be, listen harder, look deeper, and let go. And I want to, you know what? I actually forgot. There's one thing I wanted to say before I get there. This is a campaign photo that the organization CARE has been running for a while. And I'll never forget when I saw this picture for the first time. I was in an airport running to catch a plane, and it just stopped me in my tracks, because for me, I'd never seen an image like this before. Here is a woman who lives in a rural area, probably a poor area, and yet the words, "I am powerful," seem to change everything. And I think they represent that shift in the power paradigm. This woman already has power, and what she really needs are resources. And there's a big difference between the two that I think sometimes it's easy to forget. And then there's this other image that's on the Women Thrive website, the organization I work for. It's kind of similar. This is a woman who lives in a poor rural area. She doesn't have much money in her family. And you can tell she's carrying water in her head. But she's looking straight at the camera, right? It's very different than the image of the woman lying on the ground or kind of stooped over in the fields. She's confident. She's engaging. She knows her worth. And she really wants you to know her worth as well. So I love this picture and pictures like that. And I think that these pictures offer a special opportunity, which goes back to these 3 lessons I feel like I've learned from women around the world over working on international development policy. So this one idea of listening harder and then looking deeper and letting go. So listen harder. We can listen harder to women smallholder farmers, to women who are working in marketplaces around the world, to women even if they haven't had schooling. And we can ask them, what do they want? What do they need? But even more importantly, we can ask them, what do they have? What skills do they have that maybe we've overlooked as a development community, as an international community? Take this woman. She might not have gone to school, but I can guarantee you she knows how to make really good use of limited resources, right? She has to do that on a daily basis. And she may never have learned any math, but I bet she knows how to bargain for a good price for a cup of rice in the marketplace. She has amazing gifts and skills and power that maybe don't always go recognized. And so that brings us to a second point of looking deeper. When we see images and words in the media and on international development websites, we can ask ourselves, are they empowered images and words? Do they show the strength that each woman possesses no matter what her situation in life? And if they don't, if they're denigrating images, and sometimes it's a thin line of what constitutes a denigrating image, but I'd say any time when we really don't see the integrity of a person, then we can change that, because every woman is a really unique, valuable individual and deserves to be portrayed in the world with dignity. And then the third idea of letting go. As an international development community, as U.S. citizens, we can let go of control, of needing to be the ones who designed development programs, as opposed to women really being the authors of their own development. We can let go of the idea of power, of what constitutes power. That doesn't always have to be the people with the money or the people in the political positions that have power. And we can let go of not being always the ones to have to stay in the development program for the long haul. What we can embrace is women being the ones who control their own development. And we can embrace the idea of sustainable development that's really driven by local communities so that we can really work ourselves out of a job. We hear that a lot, right? We want to work ourselves out of a job, but it actually doesn't happen very often. And we can embrace the idea that Global South women, are true equals, whether they've had schooling or not, whether they have numeracy skills or not, that we have something that we can learn from women like her. And we can collaborate with her to help create and implement policies and funding that supports women's assets, and enables the power that they already have. So, in closing, I just want to tell a short personal story. I'm a new mom, and I have a little 6-month-old baby girl who's just so cute and is home with her grandma right now. And she's just, the light of my life. It's kind of changed my world, like you always hear about. And I was thinking a couple of weeks ago about what happens to her if something happens to me. And are there moms in the audience here? Yeah. So is this a global mom thing where you worry about what's going to happen to your child if anything happens to you? I never really had that experience before, where I got to go to the gym and stay healthy for my baby, and for me, but. And so one night I just couldn't stop thinking about this, and she just happened to also be up every hour, so I was already awake. And I went and got some paper, and I started writing her a letter. And I just poured into it, everything that I'd want her to learn if I wasn't going to be around someday, so that maybe she could read when she, was 10 years old or 11 years old. And in it says, I want her to know her worth. I want her to be proud of who she is and not be afraid to be who she is. And I want her to, use all her gifts and skills that she has to help, do good in the world. And I was rereading this letter the other day before coming here, and I thought, this letter's all about power in a certain way. It's, I want her to recognize and use her own power for good in the world. And I think, like we heard before, that that power doesn't have to be a dirty word, that can be a good, empowering thing that she as a woman can be proud to have and use in a new type of way, perhaps, than how it's been used before. And what I just kind of got stuck on this idea. I love the idea of every girl and every woman and every person in the world getting a letter like that, getting a message like that you have certain incredible gifts, whether you went to school or you didn't, and hopefully you did, and we should work towards that. Amazing gifts and power that you can use in the world. So I think it's an invitation for us to think about, as international development practitioners, as folks who are involved in international business, how can we help be authors of letters like that, metaphorically? How can we help take that message and spread it in the world to women around the world? So that's all I wanted to say. Thank you.